1 second, everything looks completely normal. The next, people are running for their lives as bridges collapse, rides snap apart, explosions erupt, and disasters unfold with almost no warning at all. These are real moments caught on camera just seconds before everything went horribly wrong. Number 1. The incoming wave. 6 teenage boys drove to Japan's Hikawama coast on New Year's morning in 2011, hoping to watch the first sunrise of the year together. The group climbed onto the massive concrete breakwater while freezing waves slammed against the structure below. 2 of the boys, including 16-year-old Yoshiki Hosa, moved farther out after being dared to get closer to the water. For a while, nothing happened except wind and spray crashing against the rocks. Then a gigantic wave suddenly exploded over the barrier and swept both boys straight into the sea. One managed to claw his way back onto the concrete, coughing seawater and screaming for help, but Yoshiki was dragged farther into the freezing current. One of the friends jumped in after him, disappearing beneath another wall of water moments later. Somehow, the rescuer made it back alive. Yoshiki never did. 5 days later, his body was discovered nearly 10 kilometers away from where he vanished. Investigators later revealed that high wave warnings had already been issued for the coastline before the boys arrived there that morning. But sometimes the disaster isn't a wave. It's a single mistake. One casual movement. In the next clip, 2 friends are laughing together seconds before one of them realizes he's been shot. Number 2. The unexpected gunshot. Inside a workplace in Turkey on October 9, 2024, Special Operations Officer Ahmet Atis finally agreed to show his longtime friend Kadir Osk how to handle a revolver. Kadir had apparently been asking him for weeks to teach him basic shooting techniques. Security footage showed the two laughing casually while passing the gun back and forth across the room. At one point, Kadir even jokingly pointed it at Ahmet before handing it back. Believing the weapon was unloaded, Ahmet began demonstrating different handling movements when the revolver suddenly discharged. The gunshot echoed through the room as Kadir collapsed onto the floor, clutching his chest. Ahmet reportedly froze at first because he genuinely believed it had to be some kind of prank. Then he saw the blood spreading across Kadir's shirt. Emergency responders rushed him to the hospital, but the injuries were too severe. Kadir died the following day. Prosecutors later argued that a trained special operations officer should never have treated a firearm casually, and Ahmet faced years in prison over the fatal mistake. You'd think surviving something like that would be impossible to top, but the next moment proves that sometimes the deadliest traps are the ones designed to look harmless, waiting for someone curious enough to get close. Number 3. The flag bomb. On April 21, 2024, an off-duty Israeli reserve soldier named Israel Levi was driving through the West Bank when he spotted a Palestinian flag planted beside the road. According to reports, he became enraged, stopped his vehicle, and walked toward it while his companions recorded from inside the car. Levi kicked at the flagpole, trying to rip it out of the ground. The instant his foot struck it, the entire area erupted in an explosion. The blast hurled him backward through the dirt as smoke and debris swallowed the roadside. His friends screamed from the car, unable to tell whether he was still alive. Miraculously, Levi survived with serious injuries and was treated by medics at the scene before being rushed away. Investigators later discovered the flag had been rigged as a booby trap. Weeks afterward, authorities arrested a 22-year-old suspect who allegedly confessed to planting the explosive device. And while some disasters are carefully hidden, others arrive with absolutely no warning at all. Just the ground suddenly turning against you while entire buildings collapse around terrified people. Number 4. The bakery workers who escaped. On February 6, 2023, bakery owner Bülent Şalaser and his dough master were working early in the morning inside their shop in Malatya, Turkey, when the ground suddenly began shaking violently. Surveillance footage showed trays rattling and equipment sliding across the room as the men instantly realized this was no ordinary tremor. Without hesitating, both sprinted toward the exit, while parts of the ceiling already started falling around them. Seconds after they escaped outside, the entire bakery collapsed behind them into a mountain of concrete and dust. The massive earthquake that devastated parts of Turkey and Syria that day destroyed thousands of buildings across the region, trapping countless people beneath the rubble. Escaping a collapsing building sounds like the kind of thing you never forget, but the next footage shows a normal workday turning into a deadly gunfight. Number 5. The phone store shootout. The afternoon of January 30th, 2026 began normally inside a small phone shop in Paraguay. Owner Abner Santa Cruz was behind the counter checking invoices while employee Fabiola Romero helped customers near the entrance. Then 2 men arrived on a blue motorcycle. One walked into the store pretending to browse phones before suddenly pulling out a handgun. The robbery instantly turned violent. Abner reached beneath the counter for his own firearm and a shootout erupted in the cramped shop. Fabiola was trapped directly between them. Security footage captured her collapsing beside the counter after being struck during the exchange. Abner was also shot in the leg, but continued firing as the gunman stumbled outside and collapsed on the pavement. His accomplice fled but was later arrested nearby. By the time police secured the scene, 2 people were dead, Fabiola inside the shop and the robber outside on the sidewalk. What makes moments like these terrifying is how normal they look right before disaster strikes. And nowhere is that more obvious than crowded fairs, where hundreds of people can be laughing 1 second before an entire ride takes a deadly turn. Number 6. The ride that snapped apart. Families gathered at Surangyun Village Fair in India on February 7, 2026, expecting a normal evening of carnival rides and music. Children laughed while a large swing ride spun overhead carrying nearly 30 passengers. Witnesses later said the structure had been vibrating strangely for several minutes, but riders assumed it was part of the attraction. Then a loud metallic crack ripped through the fairground. One of the main support arms suddenly failed, causing an entire section of the ride to tear free mid-motion and slam into the ground. People were thrown from their seats while others became trapped beneath mangled steel beams. Police Inspector Jagdish Prasad rushed toward the wreckage to help survivors when another heavy piece of the structure struck him in the head. He later died from catastrophic trauma. Investigators discovered the ride had reportedly been overloaded far beyond its safe capacity. After seeing twisted metal crush people in seconds, you start realizing some disasters don't happen without warning. They happen because people ignore the signs right in front of them, and the next footage proves exactly how deadly that can become. Number 7. The escalator collapse. Shoppers inside a department store in Jingzhou City, China were riding an escalator like any normal day, while surveillance cameras quietly captured something terrifying unfolding in the background. Nearly 5 minutes before disaster struck, 2 mall employees reportedly noticed something was wrong with the escalator near the top landing area. Footage showed them inspecting the machine and appearing concerned about the loose metal panel beneath their feet. But despite realizing there was danger, they never went to get help or shut the escalator down. Moments later, a woman stepped onto the escalator while holding her child's hand. The 2 employees warned her about the unstable floor, causing the mother to pick up her son as a precaution. Then the platform beneath her suddenly gave way. In a horrifying instant, the metal panel collapsed inward, and her instincts immediately kicked in. As she began falling into the machinery below, she shoved her son upward onto the solid platform above her. Nearby workers quickly grabbed the child and pulled him to safety just seconds before he also slipped toward the opening. The woman, however, disappeared completely into the escalator mechanism below. What makes footage like this so disturbing is knowing the warning signs were already there, and nobody stopped what was coming. The next clip, though, is terrifying for a completely different reason. It starts with what looks like an ordinary sports car speeding down the highway before the situation suddenly turns deadly. Number 8. The Corvette gunman. When a bright red Corvette rolled off a Sacramento dealership lot in January 2026, most people assumed it belonged to another wealthy customer. In reality, police say the driver had just stolen it at gunpoint. Over the following days, the same suspect allegedly committed multiple armed robberies across Northern California while speeding between counties in stolen sports cars. Officers finally tracked a green Corvette near San Benito County and launched a pursuit involving helicopters and multiple patrol units. During the chase, the suspect suddenly stopped, jumped from the vehicle, and opened fire directly at pursuing officers. One bullet struck a police sergeant in the head, fracturing his skull. Even after being hit by another cruiser, the gunman continued firing wildly in the roadway until officers shot him dead. The wounded sergeant somehow survived after the bullet narrowly missed penetrating his brain. After the chaos of police chases and gunfire, the next footage feels almost calm at first. Cars move normally. People walk casually. Nobody notices anything wrong, until a sudden cracking sound makes everyone realize they're standing in the worst possible place. Number 9. The bridge that suddenly snapped apart. Drivers crossing the JK Bridge connecting Tocantins and Marajano in December 2024 had no warning that the structure beneath them was about to fail. Traffic moved normally across the span while pedestrians walked along the sides, completely unaware of the danger building underneath. Then, in seconds, part of the bridge suddenly gave way. Witnesses described hearing a loud cracking noise before massive sections of concrete and steel collapsed downward. Vehicles barely avoided plunging with the structure as people ran in panic away from the collapsing roadway. The footage spread online because of how ordinary everything looked just moments before disaster struck. The next disaster proves something even scarier. Sometimes you can actually hear death coming before you see it. A deep cracking sound. Number 10. The massive boulder. 2 Chinese businessmen traveled to Peru in December 2024 to finalize a deal along the country's dangerous central highway. Days of relentless rainfall had already destabilized the mountains above the road, but traffic continued crawling through the area anyway. Their pickup truck sat trapped in a slow-moving jam when a gigantic boulder suddenly broke loose high above them. Witnesses described hearing a deep cracking sound moments before the rock came hurtling down the mountainside. The impact flipped the pickup onto its side instantly, crushing the cabin beneath tons of stone. Both passengers died immediately inside the wreckage. The driver was pulled out alive, but severely injured while rescue workers feared more rocks could collapse at any moment. After watching an entire truck crushed beneath falling rocks, it's hard to imagine something smaller being just as deadly. But the next clip proves that sometimes all it takes is one tiny object left in the wrong place for everything to explode in seconds. Number 11. The washer store. A customer inside a washer and dryer store appeared to be finishing an ordinary visit when surveillance footage captured something terrifying moments before disaster struck. The man casually walked out of the laundromat area while industrial machines continued running behind him. Then, seconds after he exited the room, one of the dryers suddenly exploded into a massive fireball. The blast violently shook the entire store as flames and debris erupted outward from the machine. Investigators later discovered that someone had accidentally left a lighter inside a piece of clothing before it was placed into the dryer. The intense heat caused the lighter to explode, igniting the machine and triggering the terrifying blast just moments after the customer narrowly escaped the area. A single lighter was enough to turn an ordinary laundromat into a fireball. But the next disaster involved something much bigger. Thousands of people gathered beneath a massive structure while dangerous storm warnings closed in overhead. Number 12. Concert chaos. Thousands of fans packed into the Indiana State Fair on August 13, 2011, waiting for the country band Sugarland to perform, while dark storm clouds gathered overhead. Weather alerts had already warned organizers about dangerous winds approaching the area, but officials reportedly reassured the crowd the concert would continue. Minutes later, powerful gusts slammed into the massive temporary stage structure. Audience members watched in horror as the giant roof truss began swaying above them before collapsing directly into the crowd. The 70,000-pound structure crushed spectators beneath twisted steel and lighting rigs, while people screamed and scrambled through debris, trying to find survivors. 7 people were killed, and dozens more were seriously injured. Crowds screaming, metal twisting, people running blindly through debris. And somehow, the next scene looks even more apocalyptic, because this time, the entire sky itself turns violent. Number 13. The tornado that hit the fairground. A crowded fair in Mukdahan, Thailand was filled with families walking between food stalls and carnival tents when the weather suddenly changed. Video from the scene showed powerful winds beginning to whip through the fairgrounds as vendors struggled to hold down loose tarps and signs. Then a tornado formed frighteningly close behind the attraction area. Within seconds, the winds ripped entire roof sections into the sky like paper while people sprinted in every direction, trying to avoid flying metal and collapsing structures. Witnesses later described the scene as looking like a disaster movie unfolding in real life. In our next story, at first it just looked like bad weather. Then people realized the giant wall racing toward them wasn't smoke. Number 14. Gigantic wall of dust. Drivers traveling through Phoenix on August 25, 2025, suddenly found themselves swallowed by a gigantic wall of dust rolling in from the Arizona desert. Dashcam footage showed visibility dropping almost instantly as the massive storm consumed the highway. Cars disappeared into the brown haze while winds violently shook vehicles across the road. Several drivers reportedly abandoned their cars entirely after realizing they could no longer see more than a few feet ahead of them. And just when you think being trapped outside in a disaster is terrifying enough, the next moment shows people inside a shopping center running for their lives. Number 15. The mall roof. Shoppers inside the Penrith Shopping Centre in Western Sydney noticed water pouring from the ceiling after intense storms dumped nearly 15 millimeters of rain in just 30 minutes. At first, people stood around filming as the roof panels visibly bent under the growing weight of trapped water. Then the entire section suddenly gave way. A massive wave of water and metal crashed down into the shopping center below, sending terrified shoppers running through the flooded corridor as debris exploded across the floor. Most people panic when they hear thunder overhead. But the next clip has something far worse. The sound of a train horn getting closer. Number 16. The incoming train. On October 4th, a tractor trailer carrying heavy equipment became stuck on railroad tracks near Redding, California. Witnesses nearby realized the danger almost immediately as the crossing barriers remained down and a train could already be seen approaching in the distance. The truck driver desperately tried to clear the tracks, but there wasn't enough time. Seconds later, the train slammed directly into the trailer at full speed. The impact ripped the heavy equipment apart and sent debris flying across the railway as the train continued pushing through the wreckage. Authorities later shut down the rail line for days, while crews cleaned up the destroyed equipment scattered across the tracks. After watching a train tear through a stranded truck in seconds, you'd think surviving something like that would be impossible. But the next clip starts with what looks like a simple car accident, before police suddenly find themselves standing in a very dangerous situation. Number 17. The car crash. Police officers responding to a car crash in Hurst, Texas, thought they were dealing with a routine accident when they arrived at a suburban home on April 7, 2018. A driver had crashed directly into the side of the house, leaving his vehicle lodged deep inside the building near the living room. Body cam footage showed officers cautiously approaching the damaged home while speaking with the driver outside. Then, without warning, the entire house suddenly exploded. A massive fireball erupted outward through the walls and roof, blasting debris across the neighborhood as officers ran for cover. Investigators later discovered the crash had severed a gas line inside the home, allowing the house to slowly fill with gas before igniting moments after police arrived. Witnesses described hearing screaming from inside the burning structure as first responders rushed toward the flames to rescue trapped residents. Miraculously, despite the violent explosion, nobody was seriously injured. A single car crash was enough to turn this entire house into a fireball. But the next disaster was even more terrifying. Because this time, the danger wasn't inside a building. It was building up directly underneath a crowded roadway. Number 18. The fuel tanker. People standing near a roadway in Saudi Arabia suddenly noticed flames erupting beneath the pavement, moments before a violent underground fuel tanker explosion tore through the area. The blast sent terrified civilians running for their lives as fire and debris exploded upward from beneath the street. Witnesses described the explosion sounding like a bomb going off beneath the city. Fire erupting from underneath the pavement sounds unreal. But when traffic is busy, you don't want the next thing happening without prior notice. Number 19. The middle of the roadway. Commuters in Bangkok narrowly avoided catastrophe when a massive sinkhole suddenly opened in the middle of a busy roadway seconds after traffic barely cleared the area. At first, the collapse already looked terrifying. A massive section of roadway had torn open from one side of the street to the other, while stunned pedestrians on the left stood along the sidewalk, staring into the crater below. Cars closest to the edge immediately began trying to reverse away, but the traffic behind them left almost nowhere to go. Then the ground suddenly gave way again. A huge section of roadway collapsed straight underground, disappearing into darkness beneath the city. Within moments, 2 additional chunks of pavement caved in one after another, each collapse sending more asphalt, debris, and concrete crashing into the widening hole below. The sinkhole transformed into a massive crater large enough to swallow multiple vehicles, or even buildings. Throughout the footage, terrified voices can be heard being scared in the background as people watch the entire disaster unfold from farther away, unable to help anyone who might still be trapped near the collapsing roadway. After watching roads collapse without warning, seeing a helicopter flying low overhead suddenly becomes a lot more unsettling. Number 20. The helicopter that fell. People eating lunch outside a crowded restaurant in Michigan watched as a helicopter descended nearby, apparently preparing to land beside the dining area. At first, everything looked routine, but as the aircraft touched down, something suddenly went wrong. The tail of the helicopter abruptly lifted upward, throwing the entire aircraft off balance. Within seconds, the helicopter slammed into the ground beside the restaurant. Customers watched the helicopter intensely as it suddenly lost control, but most didn't seem to realize how dangerous the situation actually was until the aircraft slammed into the ground beside them. Only then did people stand up and scramble away from the patio in panic. The most terrifying part wasn't just the people inside the helicopter, it was how close the crash came to dozens of people eating only a few feet away. Flying debris could have easily killed someone instantly. Miraculously, despite the chaos and how close the wreckage came to the crowd, there were no fatalities. Some of these people survived by pure luck, and others never saw the disaster coming at all. If you enjoyed the video, check out the next one for more real moments caught on camera.